Now, I say I've covered every game in the Fire Emblem series, but there is one hole that can potentially be plugged. I haven't really talked about the spin-off games at all.
If a game series gets big enough, it'll eventually reach a point where it gets some rather unconventional entries. These titles may retain some of the series' appeal, or they could be completely different. But as luck would have it, Fire Emblem eventually reached that point. What exactly qualifies as a spin-off for the Fire Emblem series is not too hard to figure out. But ironically, there is a ton of debate as to whether or not the very first Fire Emblem spin-off was actually a spin-off at all. At least for a time, it was internally labeled as the official Fire Emblem 5. But at least in this case, the West not counting this game as a mainline makes a ton of sense, when this is a game that most people haven't played in the first place. So anyway, why does this game on screen look so much like Mystery of the Emblem, and why is it called BS Fire Emblem? Ladies and gentlemen, before we can even start talking about the game today, we must first talk about the Satellaview. A company called St. Giga was established in 1990. Being a subsidiary of a satellite television station, St. Giga specialized in satellite radio programs, being the first company in the world to ever pull it off. But by 1994, the company struggled financially due to an economic recession in Japan. But this is when Nintendo bought a bunch of the company's shares and effectively helped save it. And maybe this way, Nintendo could leverage the use of satellite radio to create some truly unique games. Well, that's exactly what ended up happening. In partnership with St. Giga, Nintendo created the Satellaview, an add-on peripheral for the Super Famicom that could receive broadcast data and output game content in a variety of different mediums. A number of Nintendo's properties even got original games developed specifically for the service. Fire Emblem just happened to be one of Nintendo's franchises to be considered. Released on broadcast from September 1997 to October 1997 were 4 standalone episodes with their own stories and objectives. This collection of episodes will be collectively referred to as BS Fire Emblem Archanea Saga, which I will be referring to as BS Fire Emblem for the rest of the video for simplicity. Very little is documented on the development of BS Fire Emblem. However, it was developed internally at Intelligent Systems. For the gameplay format, the game borrows the exact game engine that was used for Mystery of the Emblem on the Super Famicom. The decision for why they used their outdated FE3 engine as opposed to the improved FE4 iteration is a mystery of the emblem to be sure. If I had to speculate, I'd wager it was to keep consistent with the visual presentation of the Archanea games. So anyway, what is the story for this game? Well, this was a prequel to the events of Shadow Dragon. But with that said, this isn't your traditional Fire Emblem narrative. The game was broadcast over 4 separate weeks, and it was possible for episodes to be played without experiencing the previous ones. This informed the storytelling for this game. Each episode was completely self-contained, and featured a different story. The first episode depicts the Duller Empire beginning its conquest against the Kingdom of Archanea. Princess Nina along with her bodyguards attempt to repel the incoming invasion, but are ultimately unsuccessful. The episode ends with Princess Nina being captured by General Camus, and will remain under his watch. The second episode switches perspectives to Minerva, who has been informed about deserters among her army causing havoc against villages in Aurelis. Disgusted by the actions of her former subordinates, she sets out along with the help of a mysterious but powerful warrior, who unbeknownst to her, is actually her enemy in the war. The third episode follows Ricard leading a band of misfit thieves to a now invaded palace of Archanea to steal the treasure inside. But don't worry, it's for the poor. Definitely. We promised the pretty cleric lady that it was. Honest. And the final episode returns us to Nina and Camus, jumping at a chance to escape Archanea and make their way to Aurelis. The hope being that Hardin of Aurelis will provide protection to Nina. And coincidentally, this is also where she will eventually meet the champion of Altea, the descendant of Henri and soon-to-be savior of Archanea. Overall, the story isn't required reading. Most of the stuff explored in this game was lightly touched upon during Shadow Dragon and Mystery of the Emblem. While it's nice to get a bit more insight on the developing relationship between Nina and Camus, I wouldn't say we really needed to see that. Still though, it's important to remember that BS Fire Emblem is a novelty. This wasn't going to be a game many people had the chance to play. Deliver something cool to the people who can try it, but nothing that'll be too devastating to lose forever. Although BS Fire Emblem did mark the first usage of different storytelling methods that were far ahead of its time. With the advantage of being broadcast, the audio didn't have to be limited to what the Super Famicom could produce. This meant we got fully arranged music playing alongside the game for the first time. But even beyond that, this was also the first Fire Emblem to feature voice acting. Players were treated to an entire audio drama alongside beautifully drawn artwork that began and closed out the scenario for each episode.
私は守ってほしくなどありません。静かに。神が来ました。死ね！神よ！
Although we are fortunate some ingenious folks had the foresight to actually hook up their VCRs and record the experience. While it was possible to extract ROM files of the original BS Fire Emblem, it is impossible to recover the audio that was broadcasted. After all, the original recording tapes most assuredly don't exist anymore. But speaking of, we do have a game to talk about. Even though it is incredibly difficult to get this game playable, it is possible nonetheless. So with a bit of elbow grease and effort, you too can be a part of the less than 1% of Fire Emblem fans that have actually played BS Fire Emblem. Although I'm not really sure if you wanna be. Trust me when I say you aren't missing much. Anyone with somewhat extensive knowledge of the Fire Emblem series can easily tell that this game has the exact same gameplay framework as Mystery of the Emblem. Almost every tool and function you had access to during the game is present here as well. So on that front, I have nothing to discuss. But where BS Fire Emblem is different is not in what you do, but how you do it. Your task isn't to capture points of interest or rout all enemies. Essentially, the objective of this game is a high-score attack. You must kill as many enemies as possible while keeping your own soldiers alive. Every enemy you defeat will grant you some points calculated at the bottom corner of the screen. What do the points do? Nothing. Brag to your friends, I guess. Each episode features a different map as well as a new playable cast for those maps. So from one week to the next, you're playing with a set of fresh units. Not to mention your overall goals and how you might achieve points are slightly different. It is even possible to recruit some new units. However, this will be done at predetermined times in this scenario, as they line up with the audio broadcast. One thing to note is while there is permanent death, technically, the game doesn't feature a proper game over condition. You have a character in each chapter who is essentially your lord. If this character falls in battle, the map will be reset to the beginning of the last player phase. Additionally, you can also manually reset the turns by pressing the LR Select Start button combination, which normally soft resets the game in most Fire Emblem titles. You might think it's possible to screw yourself over and be unable to finish a chapter, but you had to keep in mind that the victory condition is only for playing long enough until the final cutscene is ready to be broadcast. So even if you're smashing into a brick wall over and over again, you'll still finish the scenario at the same time everyone else does. But if I have to be honest, even the act of playing this game for as much as an hour at a time is extremely draining. For one, the intended experience of the audio drama can't be replicated when playing the ROM. All you get is the deafening silence. Even visually, something is missing as well. This game doesn't feature battle animations to help visualize the skirmishes taking place. Now I do understand why this decision was made. For an objective where every second matters, the animations waste too much time. Even still, I love the animations. They're a big part of the reason Fire Emblem is such a fun time. I never mind watching them, even in the games where they do slow the pacing down. Lacking both of these contribute to a really boring experience. Here's the thing. If you were to ask me what my least favorite Fire Emblem title was, and allowed me to include every game in the series, then Genealogy of the Holy War can finally breathe a sigh of relief. BS Fire Emblem is currently my least favorite Fire Emblem game. This might be my first time with the series that I actively don't enjoy my time playing one of its games. In fact, the only map that I truly enjoyed of the four was the final map. Guiding Nina and Camus along a densely populated mountain trail as they're being pursued from behind is compelling. It's an interesting challenge, and you're given the tools and resources to deal with the threat. It feels just like playing a regular Fire Emblem game. Even still, the vibes are off when I'm playing it. The fundamental appeals of why I play Fire Emblem are missing. These are all isolated incidents with no connective tissue to tie it all together. BS Fire Emblem offers nothing to the Fire Emblem fans as something unique. Its gameplay is exactly the same as a previous entry in the series. Its story doesn't technically exist alongside the game. Granted, I'm not playing the game as it was intended. I try to always evaluate older games taking age into account, because these games are forever beholden to the time and technology they were made with. Yet considering how much work I had to go through in order to play just this compromised version, I don't feel bad in saying I really didn't have a good time. Because even if I did play this game with the visuals and sound link, I don't think it would ultimately contribute to a more enjoyable experience. I'm not saying that it wouldn't help, although I fail to see what it offers beyond the novelty. But we're not done yet. As it turns out, BS Fire Emblem did actually receive a remake. After finishing Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem, players were given access to 4 additional bonus maps in the Extras menu. These 4 maps are the same maps seen in BS Fire Emblem. Sure, we might not have the voice acting or the arranged soundtrack, but we do have an experience that is readapted into the framework of the modern entries, while preserving the story to be re-experienced by fans old and new. Allow me to be blunt. I still think the bonus maps are an uninteresting experience. Even if I were to consider this a separate remake for argument's sake, I still can't bring myself to enjoy what's on offer. The new mystery versions of the BS maps are, well, BS. I want to say the difficulty is roughly equivalent to the base game's Maniac difficulty, although I'm not certain of that. Either way, these maps are freaking hard, and you're not going to complete them by accident. If you're not following a guide, you're going to be subject to a ton of trial and error as you figure out the pieces of this puzzle. Not to mention that because of this game's structure, there are game overs, and you have to restart from the beginning if you fail. It's almost enough to make me prefer the original Satellaview version of the game. Either way, I can say in earnest that BS Fire Emblem is not a game worth playing. It's a fun novelty that is interesting to learn about, but not interesting to play. Having said that, it only goes up from here. Fire Emblem wouldn't get a new spin-off game for a while, but when it did, people certainly knew about it. For better or for worse.
壊したい大事そうに抱えた私を全部君がこの孤独を痛みを癒すの消えてしまいたい眠らない街のざわめき愛想笑いの憂鬱本音なんていつかどこか見えないふりだね